So when I've been taking this out for test drives and break-in drives, I first noticed that my gas gauge, let's see if we can get a focus on that, which is right there, was reading empty. And so I went to the gas station and I filled up, and I got about 6 gallons. And I determined that I could use the odometer to tell me how far I had gone, basically before filling up. So I filled up and reset this to 0, and as you can see, it reads about 68.3 miles. So I should have probably only used 5 or 6 gallons. So the gas gauge is inaccurate. So we're going to try to fix that today. The first thing I'm going to do is, I don't know which way it goes when you don't have a ground. I would suspect, and if I were designing it, if I had a absence of ground, I would want it to read empty, because I wouldn't want the driver to think they had a full tank when in fact they don't know. But there's no harm in reading empty. If they go into the gas station and it won't take any, that's not a big problem. If they think it's full and they keep driving and they run out of gas, that's a bigger problem. So we're going to go find the ground on the back end of this, and we're going to disconnect it and see what impact that has on that fuel gauge. Well, I'm going to take you up under the backside of the car here to where I think the ground for the fuel gauge is, and let's see if I can get the camera on it. Right there. It's up near the muffler, and basically I'm thinking that the way that wire is bent, I'm guessing and maybe hoping that that is a poor connection right there where it's bent so much. So I'm going to take that off, and then we're going to go look at where the gas gauge reads with that disconnected. So I already checked, and that is a self-tapping type screw up in there. So all I got to do is get the wrench on it and take it off. So let's get this completely away from the ground. And go lower the car and take a look at what the gas gauge is going to read without a ground connected. Okay, there we have it. We have the ground wire completely disconnected, or at least I believe that's the ground wire, and it is reading slightly under completely empty. So I believe that the problem is indeed a poor ground, and my first place to check is going to be that connector where it was kind of at an angle. It looked like that probably is a little bit flaky, so I'm going to go for that next. So giving that a little bit more thought before I go and cut that connector off that wire, assuming that it's bad, I'm going to try to cobble together with some spare wire that I have laying around a good connection to ground from that wire. And if I can do that, then I can look at the gauge, and if that fixes the gauge and I showed like a half a tank, then I can assume that the problem is not necessarily the wire, but it could be where the wire bolts to the frame, because I painted the frame. I could have a poor connection between that bolt that holds that wire on and the frame. So I got to rule that out before I jump into repairs that aren't really necessary. Found myself probably a 10-foot long piece of 10 gauge wire, and I put clamps on both ends of it. And what I'm going to do now is, on the one side of it, I'm going to connect it right to the bolt that connects the battery cable, ground cable to the frame. Since everything else works on the car, I suspect that's going to be a really good ground connection. So that guy is right up here. I suspect that's going to be good. And then what I will do is I will take the other wire, the other end of the wire I should say, and connect it to that wire that I disconnected. And that should give me a good ground. I'm going to zoom in onto where I hooked that up to the end of the battery cable where it connects to the ground. And then I'm going to hook it up to the wire I disconnected. Okay, and that wire, the connector itself seems a bit corroded, so I'm not even sure if putting this on, and I got the camera in my way again, not sure if putting this on is really going to give me a good connection. But let's try it anyway. And we will I might have to clean that up and do it again, but for now that's connected. Let's see what we get on the gas gauge. Okay, I'm going to try to show you a couple things here. I found the wire that comes out of the sending unit in the fuel tank, and I disconnected it, and those terminals are very clean. As are, if I can find the other one, the other end that plugs into that. There it is. Again, very clean. So I'm not concerned about those being the issue. I am going to back this off a little bit. I am going to attempt to use my Dremel type tool by holding that wire with a pair of long reach needle nose pliers. These happen to have a curved tip. I'm not sure that's important. But I'm going to do that off camera because I don't think I can get all that and my hands up in there and have you see what I'm doing anyways. But just be assured that I'm cleaning up this connector right here before I resort to cutting the wire and putting a new connector on it. Okay, I'm kind of flying blind here because I don't have any idea what these readings ought to be, but what I've done here is I have reconnected that wire up to the ground up there, and I have my voltmeter between the power wire there, and the ground that's bolted into on the chassis. And I am reading 8.49 volts, which sounds kind of low, but let's see if I can get the... Okay, 8.49 volts. And when I do that, and I look in at the gas gauge, okay, I'm hand holding the camera here, so it might be a little shaky, but there's the gas gauge. When I do that, it's pegged far beyond full. So I'm afraid that if I plug this back in and it doesn't work, that my problem is in the either the wiring to the sending unit in the tank or the sending unit in the tank. I'm going to connect that back up and see what I get. Okay, the voltmeter is connected again. I'm sorry, the voltmeter is disconnected, and the gas gauge is reading less than the amount of gas that I think is in that tank. So I got to disconnect this camera and get a better shot. So I had to move lower the lift, and still reading, well, from this angle a little below empty. I suspect that the problem is I don't have 12 volts going into the sending unit, therefore I can't have as many volts coming out as I need to make this gauge work the way it should. That's going to be tough to track down, but I guess that's what I've got to do. So what I've done is I've taken two spade connectors and I've put them on the connector that goes to the sending unit in the tank, and right here's one of the wires, and right here is the other wire, and I've got my ohm meter connected to it, and I'll touch the other side of the ohm meter to the other wire and see roughly the resistance, and if that's within the range of what it's supposed to be, but I'll have to do some research on that to find out what it's supposed to be, for about a half tank of gas, then I'll know that the sending unit is okay, and I really think I have narrowed it down at that point to not having 12 volts on that wire coming in. Okay, I think I've got the voltmeter set up where both the camera can see it and I can see it. First thing, of course, right now, because I don't have the other wire connected, is an open circuit, which is indicated by a 1, and I am now connecting it to just the alligator clip on the voltage meter to see how much resistance I have in just these leads to the ohm meter. And now I will connect it to the other wire coming out of the sending unit. So boy, not much difference in the resistance, maybe 1/10 of an ohm. I don't don't think that's 3 ohms. I think that's 0.3. Let me put it on a more sensitive setting, the most sensitive. I can't even read what that is from here. My eyes aren't that good. Again, let's put this up where we can see it. Better check to make sure that's in the frame. It is. And I'll check just the leads again. Okay, and that is, let me get a good connection there. Now that says 8 ohms, and before it said 2. That's interesting. Eight 8.1. 8. That's on the other side of the other pigtail coming out of there. Huh. That's an interesting. That is just on the leads to the voltmeter. .4. That was going through the sending unit in the tank. And these wires on this voltmeter must not be making a good contact, because that should be almost no resistance. I've had problems with that before, which led to, and I don't know if it was with this voltmeter or not, but it led to wrong conclusions being drawn. I'm going to shut that off and see if I can find another voltmeter or another leads to make this more accurate. I have a different lead, and that is connected the 2 leads together. So I'm showing 21 ohms of resistance with just the leads connected. And now I'm having trouble connecting the wire. 22.5 going through the 21.8 going through the thing. So maybe I'm confused. Maybe it's voltage that is the thing. I don't know. I thought the voltage would be dropped by the resistance, but at this point I'm baffled. I'm going to have to do more research, try to figure out what's wrong, but I still believe that the problem is that I don't have 12 volts back here. And without doing major surgery on the wires, I don't know how to provide 12 volts. Besides, it's got to probably come from the through the fuel gauge in the dashboard. So that's a major project, taking off that console gauge bezel, which I am not going to do today because I want to take the car out tomorrow.